This is a CBS News special report.
This is Mike Wallace at the CBS Newsroom in New York. America's first 3 Apollo astronauts were trapped and killed by a flash fire that swept their moonship early tonight during a launch pad test at Cape Kennedy in Florida.
Apollo is a human spaceflight program carried out by NASA. The Apollo program was a series of space missions conducted by NASA with the goal of landing humans on the moon and returning them safely to Earth. The crew included 3 American astronauts, Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee. A month before the flight on the moon, on January 27, the team decided to conduct a test designed to simulate launch conditions without actually starting the engines. During a pre-flight test of the Apollo spacecraft at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the crew had to turn off the power supplies, which were supposed to determine whether the spacecraft would work in space with all the cables disconnected. In order to stimulate the increased pressure in the cabin, in space conditions, it was filled with pure oxygen with a pressure slightly above atmospheric. With an increase in the level of oxygen in the cockpit, communication with the operating team was poor, and the member of the crew, Grissom, commented on it.
Hey, how are we gonna get to the moon if we can't talk between 3 buildings? I can't hear a thing you're saying. Jesus Christ.
At 6:20 p.m., suddenly, at some point during the tests, one cosmonaut shouted and reported the fire that had appeared.
Hey! Oh, there's no fire in the cockpit.
It turned out that the fire was caused by poor wiring of the combustible substance. In an atmosphere of pure oxygen, the fire quickly spread to combustible items in the cockpit. The higher pressure from the fire and the high temperature resulted in high pressure inside the cabin, and low pressure outside prevented the astronauts from opening the hatch. One of the main figures blamed for the Apollo 1 disaster was NASA engineer Joseph Shea, who was the manager of the Apollo spacecraft program office at the time. Shea was responsible for overseeing the development and testing of the Apollo spacecraft, and his team were accused of cutting corners and rushing spacecraft construction to be on deadlines. He was more focused on meeting deadlines and achieving milestones than on safety and quality. The president of the USA at that time was John Kennedy, who put the deadlines until the end of the decade.
Achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
It is worth noting that the people involved in the Apollo 1 program were motivated by the desire to accomplish one of the greatest feats in the human history: landing people on the moon. The fact that in those years the Cold War between the Soviet Union and America was at its peak, NASA was very ambitious in the space race, but this led to the empty death of astronauts. The astronauts did not manage to escape, as the hatch was difficult to open and the capsules were filled with poisonous smoke and vapors. All 3 cosmonauts died from asphyxiation, and their bodies received third-degree burns. As a result, NASA has made a number of significant changes to its policies, regulations, and technology to ensure the safety of the future space missions. One of the most notable changes was the redesign of the Apollo spacecraft, which included improved electrical wiring, ventilation systems, and cockpit design. NASA also created a new safety review board to oversee the development and testing of all future spacecraft, and introduced new safety procedures and training programs for astronauts. The Apollo 1 disaster also had a significant impact on public opinion and attitudes towards space exploration. The tragedy highlighted the risks and dangers of spaceflight and raised concerns about the cost and feasibility of sending humans to the moon. However, despite these concerns, the United States continued its pursuits of the Apollo program and successfully landed astronauts on the moon in 1969. Overall, the Apollo 1 disaster was a tragic event that had a profound impact on the world and on the future of space exploration. The changes and the improvements implemented by NASA in the aftermath of the tragedy helped to ensure the safety of the future space missions, and the event served as a reminder of the risks and challenges inherent in spaceflight.